if you want to support the show, any of the shows, either this or whichever show, I'm not on right now because this is just a blanket ad for all of them, and the website, you can go to bewareofspoilers.com. In the description for any of the episodes of Beware of Spoilers, there is the option to donate. If you don't want to donate that way, you can donate directly through the website. We do have that, mwpnews.com. And if you don't want to support that way, then going to mwpnews.com will help out because we have ads there. We don't want to keep it, where there's a lot of ads. There's a few ads. But the point is we want to make it so that way, we can sustain this for the long term. If people donate, we're never going to paywall anything, I don't think, as of right now. But if people, start donating, we'll start doing cooler and cooler stuff. Like donations are how we get to cover stuff like Tribeca and other, film festivals. And, we may be able to bring on more people to help out. So if you want to help out the show and you want more content from us, by all means, even just going and giving us a 5-star rating on Spotify helps out a lot. But that's it. That's the only ad we'll have on the podcast ever. But here's whatever podcast you're going to be listening to. Good morning. Sorry for the pause there. I was trying to do two things at once. And welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam. And take 2 for this. Because I started recording this yesterday. I got most of it done. And then at the end I got pulled over. Not for doing this, because there's no way anyone would know I'm doing this, because I have a mic set up in my car. Like it's a lav mic that goes, it's a lapel mic, basically, that I could put there so I could talk without having to look at anything, and I can just drive. It's the same as, like, having a Bluetooth in your car, basically, but it's a lav mic. It's a little bit closer, you get a little bit better sound quality. It's an improvement, I would say, over the old system, where I was recording off my phone, mounted on my dash. But this is a little bit cleaner. And the app doesn't let me do that anymore, so we're doing this now. But the point is, I was driving on the expressway and on my way to work, which is where I usually record these, and then I get, let's just go over this real quick, because this is absolutely ridiculous. So I'm going at a good clip. I'm not speeding by a large margin where it's like this person is driving like an unhinged lunatic, which people do on the expressway, don't get me wrong. But I'm going, like, the speed limit's 55, which is absurd for this expressway, but, like, speed limit 55, whatever. I'm going, like, 65, and this car pulls up behind me, and it's a big truck, and this is this new thing the police have now. It's these cars that you can't tell if they're behind you, that they are police cars. Like, that's the intent, is that you don't know it's a police car if they're directly behind you. Especially, I don't drive like a truck, I drive like a little 4-door, sedan. And the issue becomes, and this fucking sidewalk made this so much worse, it's ridiculous. But the point is, it's like I'm driving and this car pulls up behind me. And not only is it behind me, because if it's behind me you can see the lights, but it's tailgating me. To the point that in my rearview window I can only see the grill of the car. No lights on, nothing like that. This car is just directly behind me. And I'm like, alright, I know what this means. It means I'm not going fast enough for you. It's Long Island asshole for speed up, motherfucker. I want to go a little bit faster. So I oblige and speed up. And I think I saw someone on the other side of me that he was trying to get around. And I was like, oh, okay, so it's clear what's going on here. He wants me to speed up so that way he can get around this other guy into the other lane, then get around me and cut me off. And I'm like, look, I've seen this movie before. I know how this works. Let's just let this happen and get this over with. So I speed up a little bit. As soon as I speed up, boom, lights go on, and, I get pulled over. And I'm like, fuck, what the fuck is with this? So I got a speeding ticket, and here we are. While I was on the way to work, I was recording the thing about Rick and Morty, the anime. So yeah, so that's what we're going to talk about today, now that it's at its end, I believe. I hope, because I've watched all the episodes up until this point, and I hope this is over. But Rick and Morty, the anime. So what this show is, and I debated putting that episode up, but at the end I trail off because I realize what's happening. I'm like, fuck, and then I get pulled over, and, you know, here we are. But Rick and Morty, the anime. I think that the Rick and Morty fan base was not prepared for a show like this. That's not me saying the show is great. And I think there was also a bit of a misdirect about what, like, the difference between expectation and reality when it comes to an anime adaptation of Rick and Morty. Because when I hear, and I didn't look at any of the trailers or anything, but I hear Rick and Morty, the anime, and I hear, like, oh, it's Rick and Morty, but in anime form, I'm like, oh, okay, that could be interesting, because it's like, if you do like My Adventures with Superman, which was Superman the anime, I was like, oh, cool, that could be interesting. I think that would be an interesting thing to use this medium for. Because telling that story is, you know, they do all these kind of space adventures and all of that. And I think when I did the episode a few weeks ago where I talked about the first episode of Rick and Morty, the anime, I was like, I get what they're going for here, where it's more of an homage of the older style anime, not the more modern that I think most people who are like, oh, I want to watch an anime would associate it with. Like, because it looks and feels like the 80s and 90s. 80s and very early 90s. Or even going back further than that. Like, this reminded me a lot of, like, Gundam. The original Gundam movie. Slow, methodical, not a ton of movement. Let the moment hang. And when the moment hangs, you get this, you know, you get the, what's it called? You get things that work. And that was, like, the first episode. You get that a lot. Like, and even in the second. And I think that kind of works for what this show is. But also, it feels oddly disconnected. And I think a lot of people going into this show would have expected something visually more like Space Dandy, which was an anime that ran on Adult Swim that was very colorful, very high quality animation and visuals. Like, the art on that was fantastic. Like, that's one of those things where it's like, that show looked great, and I think that's kind of what people were expecting, like that kind of thing. Or like My Adventures with Superman, which I may have called Superman and Lois earlier. I meant My Adventures with Superman, where it's like, it looks great and it's an homage to classic anime, or more modern anime. It's that kind of adaptation, and it looks great. And that is, I think, what a lot of people were expecting from the show. And I think the thing is too, there is room for Rick and Morty the anime to work as kind of like an inter-season kind of, here's a little bit of Rick and Morty. And I think that using this as kind of they're stuck in an anime kind of thing would have been interesting. But I think that part of the fundamental other issue is, I think that the voice actors being different and the way they portray the characters being different from what we're used to is kind of one of those things where I'm like, why is that something that we need to have on this show? Like, it's inherently going to turn people up. And I think the thing is too, one of the things we've seen recently across not just this but across other shows as well is people say they want something different, but fundamentally all they want is new packaging on something they already know they like. And they want it to be kind of the same, just with a different frame, just with a different box, make it a little different, not too different, a little different, but still better than what we've seen in the past. And that is, this show kind of perfectly encapsulates that. Because this show does something different, and it is different. It's a different take on Rick and Morty's relationship. It's a different take on who these characters are and how they interact with each other, and all of that is and look, if you're going to take the opportunity to do a new version of Rick and Morty, then obviously I would say you should take full advantage of the opportunity to be like, okay, so we're going to kind of deconstruct what it is about this that works, and we're going to change it slightly. Like, that is what makes someone good at what they do. And I forgot who the creator was who did this. It's a legendary anime director who did this show, but he didn't, giving him the leeway to do basically whatever he wants, was a good idea, but it also was kind of the curse of the show, because inherently you're going to be fighting the uphill battle from people who are not thrilled about the fact that he didn't just do another season of Rick and Morty just in a different art style. It's The Acolyte, it's The Last Jedi, it's, we've seen this time and time again. This idea where we need to have a show kind of just be a repackage of what we already love, and then and then just have it be the same thing, where it's like, look, I think there are valid criticisms of this, and I know that one of the things I criticized was like the relationships and the way they characterized it being different from the regular show and all of that, but at the same time, it's like, at a certain point, you can deconstruct, and then at a certain point, it's like, well, why wasn't this just a different show? Because you could do kind of a different show. It's not like Rick and Morty is the most original idea on the planet, where it's like, at its core, it started out as a parody of Back to the Future. It's just kind of, weird that this is the choice they went with. Like, and I would just rather they just given the money and said, hey, make something new, make something different using a different IP. Like, because I think the thing is, too, I think the Rick and Morty IP is too new. Manifesto time. Someone with a manifesto on their car and Trump stuff. Love that. Love the people. And quick tangent, because I don't know if everyone else out there in America have seen cars like this, but they're like, the paint that you use to write like congratulations and stuff like that on your car, people use that to use every possible inch of space on your car to write, these horrific anti-Semitic manifestos. And I think I see, every time I see these cars, my thought is always, do they keep that car in a garage during when it rains, or do they just rewrite this every time it rains? Because that shit comes off with water. I don't know, food for thought. Either way, I wouldn't say Rick and Morty, the anime, is necessarily the sin against nature people make it out to be, and I think that that's kind of, again, a problem with the current way we look at media criticism, where it's like, it's either the best thing ever made or the worst thing ever made, with no middle ground or nuance. I think that the show is not as bad as it's the worst thing ever made. I'll probably never watch it again, in the same way that, like, Rick and Morty is one of my ambient noise shows while I'm doing other things. Like, last night I was working on a Civ 5 run for the YouTube channel, and as I'm playing it, I'm watching Rick and Morty, and it's like, oh, okay, well, that is, it's an ambient noise show. It's up there with, like, Family Guy was one for a while. Impractical Jokers, like things like that, are shows that I just keep on while I do other things. And that was kind of my big thing here, where it's like, I don't think I'm ever going to go back to this. I don't think it's really an important watch. I think if you watch it once and you enjoy the first episode, then keep going. But I wouldn't seek this out. Especially, I think, if you're a hardcore Rick and Morty fan. Which I think is kind of what the problem is that it's like, this is very specifically appeling to the hardcore Rick and Morty fan. Like, that, like, say, here's Rick and Morty, and that's the thing, too, is that it's like, Rick and Morty has been kind of, since it started, a kind of living document as to what the fan base wants at any given moment. Because the show does seem to appease what the fan base wants. The idea, like, take where the show started in season 1 and even season 2 and where it is now. Like, yeah, the episodes that are kind of not canon serialized adventures, like, are interesting and kind of similar, and the characters are growing. But the idea that, like, what's what we're looking for here? Like, I mean, the case in point is the amount of, like, mental backflips I have to do to kind of explain what went on with Rick and Beth and his wife. Like, it's kind of like, okay, so I think it's weird because it's like, okay, so we hear early on, it's like, okay, so Rick had, Rick had a, he left. He abandoned Beth, and Beth has these abandonment issues. So Beth, because she has these abandonment issues, she's willing to appease Rick in all of his nonsense. Okay, great. That's interesting motivation for this character. Okay, so that's something that we have there. Then we get to season 3, and it's like, oh, so here's this thing that, like, oh, look, and Rick, this other version of Rick killed Beth and Beth's mom. And it's like, but Beth is alive. So I think no one really thought anything of it besides the fact that, like, the way I always interpreted that scene in season 3 was like, this wasn't real. He's just manipulating the memories to show the bugs what he wants them to see, like, and trick them into doing what he wants. Like, that's the way I interpreted that. And then it's like, oh no, that's canon. And it's like, okay. And then we get the serialized thing over the course of a few seasons where it's like, and now Rick's gonna go after the Rick that killed Beth's mom. And it's like, okay, but did they even give that character a name? But whatever, it is what it is. And then it's like, okay, so, but did what happened in that memory actually happen? I haven't got up to season 5 of my rewatch yet, like, where, at the end of season 5, where they show the backstory of, of Rick. Because I think it is just they killed, wasn't it just that they killed her mom, and that was it? I could have, like, the whole thing is just kind of like, oh, we're just gonna kind of play with this idea, and where it goes, and it is very much best idea wins, it feels like, for how they handle canon, which, okay, fine, like, if that's what you want to do, and that's how a lot of these kind of non-sequitur TV shows that are designed to be shown in syndication kind of work, where it's like, what's the best idea for this? Okay, we'll go with that, and that'll be where we go from here, and we'll just adjust as we go, where it's like, I mean, that's how sitcoms have worked for decades. But at the end of the day, if that's what we're going with, and that's how this is going to end up, working, then we have to address the elephant in the room. We have to address we have to address what we're looking for here. The idea that, I don't know, like, if you're going to do this idea, I guess the point is, if you're going to do this idea, which is entirely designed to try and generate hype within your core base, your core fan base of the show, you gotta commit all the way to doing it the way the fan base wants. Otherwise, it's just not gonna be what they want. Especially at this stage now, where people were looking at, where people were looking at the show under renewed scrutiny from season 7 on, because you no longer have, who was it, Justin Roiland was the one who voiced him. He's not on the show anymore, so they're looking for excuses to pick the show apart now under new leadership. I remember when they introduced the psychiatrist in season 3, there are people who were pissed. It's like, oh, look, they brought a woman into the writer's room, and now they're shoehorning another woman character in, and now they're giving Beth and Summer more things to do. And it's like, look, it's like, at a certain point, you got to stop appeasing this fan base. And look, if, like, I get you don't have a show out the fan base, but a lot of times you got to kind of, you know, move past it, I think. But regardless, we'll wrap up there for today. Tomorrow we will be doing Transformers 1, the new Transformers movie. Sunday, I believe, we'll be doing the 4:30 movie, the new Kevin Smith movie. I'm going to be going all the way pretty far to do that. And then there was one more thing. I forgot what it was, though. There definitely was one more thing, but I forgot what it was. Can't remember. But we'll wrap up there for today. Oh, we have our film festival. We'll go over another time. We're out of time. But we'll be back in the near future with a new episode. Until then, have a great rest of your week.